Welcome to season 3 of the Venue Success podcast. I'm your host, Tirzah Caffee. And this season, every episode is just a quick, actionable tip from Tirzah to help you elevate your venue. And today we're going to be talking about tracking. And I know this is a very unsexy topic, but it is one that I would say that this was a foundational element to how I ran my business was understanding the data behind everything that I was doing. I would let the information guide where I spent my energies and my resources at my venue. And so if I didn't have the data, if I wasn't tracking it, then I often found that I was just throwing noodles at the wall, trying to see what sticks. And I believe that a lot of you do that. When I sit on these diagnostic calls with you, those are my absolute favorite things, by the way. And, we get to really dig into what is actually broken or what needs to be adjusted at your venue. And a lot of times you come to me and you think that you know what the problem is, but you're just guessing, that you don't have any data to back that up. Maybe it's a gut feeling, which in and of itself, isn't bad. I actually am a big believer in trusting your gut. But when it comes to spending thousands of dollars on marketing and things like that, you need to make sure that you are doing that in an educated manner. So today is all about, how I did that and the metrics that I was looking for. And again, this is not a really deep session about how to truly do this. I do this with my one-on-one clients, and it's way more than what I could talk to you about today in a podcast. But let me just give you a little overview. If you watch my episode about the three-legged stool, you understand that there's three main metrics that I'm looking at when it comes to lead gen. So how many leads do I have coming in? How full is my funnel? Of those leads, how many are turning into tours? And of those tours, how many of those are converting into booked clients? And that is something that I tracked very closely. I know that there's probably I'm going to get tons of DMs and emails about people saying, hey, have you checked out this, app, or have you checked out this resource, whatever. I like to just create my own because I know it gives me exactly what I need. And so that's what I've done. So I basically had a graph, and my salesperson every single month would go in and just input the data. It took less than 60 seconds, and we would track that in basically Excel. And I could see how many leads we had, how many tours, how many conversions. So that's the first thing that I want to see. And I could track that month over month. And so I know a lot of you, I would say 9 out of 10 venues that I talk to, when I ask these questions, like how many leads you have coming in, how many conversions, it's something that you have to dig really hard for. And I don't expect you to just know that instantly. I mean, I wish you did. I wish that you had a pulse on your business that well that you would know, because it's so very important. Most of you could eventually kind of figure this out. But I want you to be able to have a document on your desktop that you can open up, that you can at any point be able to look and see this data. Leads, tours, conversions. Also, something else that I created was an event summary. And basically what this was every booking that would come in, I would put into this document. Most of our reporting was done in QuickBooks, and because, that is what our bookkeeper wanted. And so there's a lot of these reports that could be run in there. But actually, my CPA created, with my help, and we kind of worked in conjunction with me and my husband and him, these two documents that became kind of the lifeblood of our business. And so he created those with us, and that's what we use. But the event summary would be a business snapshot at the end of every single month that we would save and then put it into an archive. And so if I was feeling stressed, say, at the time of recording, it's the end of February right now. Say, I just came off an incredible January, which is very typical engagement season. And I sold 15 weddings in January. Well, all of a sudden February comes and I only sold 8. And I'm like, what's going on? I was riding this high and it was so great. Now only sold 8 in February. That's such a bummer. Is something wrong? Is my marketing messed up? And, all these worries. If I had the data, if I had been doing this like I did year over year, I could go back and look like, well, in February of 2025, this is what happened. And in January of 2025, this is what happened. Look, exact same thing. There was a peak and then it kind of went down a little bit. I had been doing this for about 13 years. And so that you have other factors that kind of insert themselves, like the pandemic, or, I actually had even more years of data beyond this because our families had 5 venues for over 30 years. We knew that there were typical things that would happen on election years. We know that there was things that happened to a lot of us back in 2008. Gosh, let's not talk about it. There's things that are anomalies. That's basically what I'm getting at. And things that you could kind of see are natural, normal trends. And if you don't have the data to back it up, I could understand that it would be really easy for you to freak out when sales dip or leads decline or something like that. This is also a really important metric. If you see something that, oh my gosh, my leads dropped in half, and normally this time of year it's X, Y, or Z, it could be informative that something is like maybe your Google ad got interrupted and you didn't realize it and somehow it got turned off, or, whatever it is, it could be informative to show you that something is broken. But again, you can't know if you don't track it. So what we did with our event summary is it was basically a snapshot of, now we were all inclusive. So let me just say that there was a lot more to track. So we would be like, okay, they booked and this client booked at this rate. And then they booked all of these services, cake, DJ flowers. They skipped photography and officiant. And this is what they did. This is what they booked for. Then at the end of that event, we would go in and close that event out after it's been produced, and we would write in this document how many amendments they had. Like, how many things did they add? Well, maybe they didn't put flowers in at the beginning, but they ended up adding it, or they upgraded their alcohol, whatever it is. So what was the ending contract number? So if they booked at 20,000, but they ended out at 25,000, I can see the average amendment. And so this was actually really informative to us, just this one little snippet of information of what was the total contract amount, because I could go back in as I was forecasting and budget planning for the next year. Do you budget plan? I really hope you do. When I was budgeting for the next year, I could be like, okay, well, if we sold 100 weddings at this rate, I have the data to show that every single wedding, and this is our real data, added $3,800 of just extra things, photo booth, upgrade liquor, upgraded linens, whatever it may be. I saw real numbers that would happen, so I could forecast an extra X amount of dollars worth of amendments. For us, I think it ended up being 6 figures worth of add-ons that every single year that we could count on that income. So what I would do at the end of every month is I would take that document and I would save it. I put it in this archive, and I really didn't do much with it except I could have a business snapshot of every single month and every single year for all these years to compare year over year, which is really helpful. Yes, you can run your P&Ls through QuickBooks. You could see some of that data. It's not the exact metric set I wanted. And so that's why we created our own document. Now, if you want access to that document, that is something that I give to all my one-on-one and my consulting clients. If you want access to that and you're not super great at Excel, just send us an email, hello@tirzahcaffee.com, and my team could give you access to that for sure. The other thing that I feel like I want you guys to hear my heart, and I'm pausing because I don't want to come across like I'm being insensitive about this, but you need to understand there is mountains and valleys in the wedding industry, and it's never going to feel like a steady climb. It's just not. And there's always, the people that are buying weddings, right? They are, of course, we understand that Gen Z is buying different than millennials, different than Gen X, like different than boomers. Like we all buy differently. And, I've got plenty of sessions where I talk to you about that. What I want you to just sit back and ponder is that it's normal for it to go up and down. And you actually don't want it to be a steady climb because honestly, do you even want to build your business where year after year after year, it's just always growing bigger and bigger and bigger, and you've got then bigger problems to deal with? And there's always going to, people that are buying weddings, this is what I was getting at, they're consuming the same social media as us. They're uh, watching the same news as us. And so when there are crazy things happening in the world, you also need to have grace for the fact that people may feel like the world's a little wonky and their parents might be feeling worried about their investments and like, I don't know if I want to pull that much out of my 401k. And there's just so many things happening that we cannot predict. And that just goes with the territory of running a wedding venue, my friends. Because at the end of the day, it is a luxury item. People could go to the courthouse and get married. What is it? 80% of people are living together before they get married. So a lot of them don't feel like the urgency to even get married in the first place. And so these are just normal things that I have seen. And I have compassion for people that feel worried and they see one good month and a bad month. And, it's just constant anxiety that we could feel sometimes. But I just want to encourage you to take some of those energies and put it into tracking your data and having a really great, clean system for the way that you do that. I could show you 13 years of data of how many leads I had coming in, how many tours I had, and how many conversions. And here's one other thing that I feel like is really important is that I could show you, like, say I save it at on February 28th, 2026, I save it. I know how many bookings I had for 2027. This is really important. In March, I know how many bookings I have for 2027. And what this does, it informs me, okay, every year by July, I want to have X amount of events sold for the following year. And I could track year over year how many I have for the following year because that's something that you really need to track. And especially with your sales teams, if you have bonuses set in place, which you should set in place for them that are based upon total events sold or revenue, whatever that may be, then you have something for them to aim for. And that's what I always did with my sales team. I'm like, okay, by this point in the year, this is how many I want you to focus on 12 months out, 15 months, 18 months out. And if you hit that point before September 1st, or if you hit it by, December 31st, or whatever it is, that they get an extra bonus based upon those projections. But again, you can't incentivize them if you don't know what you're aiming for and what is typical for you to sell within a certain amount of time. There are some of you venues out there that it is very normal for you to be booking weddings inside of like 9 months. Some of you are in locations where almost everyone is booking 15 to 18 months out, and that is just very normal for you. So again, you cannot compare your story to someone else's. You can't. In general, we could know like, okay, everyone across the country is a little low on conversions right now. Okay, well, that's interesting information. To me, honestly, as a venue owner, I don't care what someone is doing in California. I don't care what someone is doing in Missouri. I care about what's happening in my market. And I'm more competitive with myself than I am with what is happening all around me. And that's what I would encourage you in as well. Now, I do want to kind of rabbit trail a tiny bit before I wrap up today to talk about when you're incentivizing people for sales. And I think this is important because the tracking was actually that was one of the main reasons why I started to do it was because of this. I was actually the one that was in the director of sales and marketing role, and I wanted to see year over year how I was doing. And so but when I had someone come into the position and took over my role, I realized, gosh, this is actually so helpful to know because I wasn't just tracking the number of events that I sold, I was tracking my total revenue. So hear this. I told my director of sales and marketing, okay, if you sell 50 weddings for the following year by X date, you get this bonus. However, if you sell this amount of revenue, even if it's like 5 or 10 less events, if you hit this revenue mark, you also get the bonus. So what it did is it helped her sell weddings at a higher level. It helped her work really hard at upselling during some of that contracting process, encouraging people to upgrade alcohol or whatever it was. And I found that when I started doing that, she was selling significantly less weddings at a higher rate so that she could hit that bonus faster. Isn't that what you want? Less weddings, more revenue? I never could have incentivized her to do that if I didn't have the data to back it up. I hope this is making sense to you. So, if you are interested in this tracking sheet that I have, please again reach out to my team. I'd be happy to get that into your hands. Again, just email us at hello@tirzahcaffee.com. So, be encouraged, friends. Just know that if you're feeling a bit in a lull right now, that's pretty common this time of year. I always felt like during tax time that things got a little bit weird. And so from February to April, depending, some people are doing their taxes early. And so they're in the weeds of that even right now. I always felt like there was also a chunk of people that are like, well, I don't want to put my deposit down until I get my tax return back. And there's just things that we saw over the years that were common things that people said in the early spring. I'm doing tours for one of my clients right now, and I think 80% of the tours that we've had got engaged in that window of Thanksgiving to Christmas. And so I think that data still tracks that 40% of engagements happen over the holidays. So January is always going to be a busy time for bookings. I think that there is a second big booking time that I have seen, which is, and again, this was just in my market, so this is not across the board, but July, in some ways, it was almost bigger than January. And there's one year I think I sold 20 weddings in a July, but typically I think in July we sold about 30 to 40% more than we did in other months, which is just interesting information. Anyway, so two main things. We've got the graph that tracks your leads, tours, and conversions. And then we have the big event summary that we would basically put all of our data, what the total booking contract price was, their end contract price, how many vendors they booked. And kind of the other thing that was really helpful for that, with us being all inclusive, I could look back at that data and be like, hey, DJ, you sold 20% more events this year. That's really, really great. And I would be able to know exactly how many people booked every single vendor and if they did it as an add-on, if they did it at contract. So that was another really cool metric that we tracked as well. So I'm going to leave it at that for now. I hope that this, at the very least, just encourages you to open up your computer, create your own little tracking guide. But here's the thing, put a reminder in your phone the last day of every month. It doesn't work as well if you don't save it at the exact same time every month. You don't want to be one month it's the last day of the month, one day it's the middle of the month, then the data just gets kind of skewed a little. So set a reminder to keep that document updated and save it at the last of every month. And hey, in a year from now, you'll be really glad that you did. I promise you. So that's all I have for you today. I hope that you're enjoying this season of Tips from Tirzah. If you're listening and you're interested in being on next season, we're getting back into our venue series where we are interviewing venue owners all across the country so that you could hear their stories, hear some of their challenges, some of their wins, and give these venue owners some visibility as well. So if you're interested in being on the show, please reach out to our team. You could do that through any of our channels. Instagram is a great way to do it. If you don't follow the Venue Success Podcast on Instagram, just pop over there. There is a link in our bio to fill out the form to apply to be on the show. We would absolutely love to have you. We are about 50% full for next season, so reach out to us and we'd love to have you on. Have a great day, my friends.